call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Jeff?
Here.
Bob?
Here.
Brandy? Here. Kurt?
Here.
Taylor?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Jay?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a full assembly in the chambers today, and it's now time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, that brings us to approval of minutes. Item A is approval of the minutes from the Board of Equalization meeting that was held on April 9th, 2019. I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved. Second.
Motion been made by Member Mutri, seconded by Member Marole to approve those. If there's no changes, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, those are approved. Brings us to item 4 today, and that's amendment and approval of today's meeting agenda. Is there any changes today? Member Norheim?
I would like to change the name of discussion item A from privatization of the library to discussion of possible alternative funding for the library.
Is there a second?
A second.
Motion's been made by Member Norheim, seconded by Member Marole to change the wording under the first discussion item A, privatization of the public library. And did you have written down, Debbie, what Taylor said? And
Yes, I
can you
did.
repeat that one more time, Member Norheim?
Discussion of possible alternative funding for the public library.
Okay, is there any discussion on that? I guess the clerk call the roll on the amendment to change the wording.
Okay. Kurt?
Yes.
Brandy? Yes. Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Sure.
Bob?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the wording will be changed. Member Stanton Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would move that we break from protocol and move discussion item A regarding the library to put it at the end of the mayor's report, the first order of unfinished business. I saw there's a lot of faces out here today. I briefly talked with several of them who are going to be testifying about that, and from my own perspective, I always feel bad making everyone wait through a long meeting to hear the part they came to talk about. So I'd move that it'll be our first order of unfinished business.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion's been made by Member Gregor and seconded by Member Morrell to move discussion item A to right after the mayor's report. Is there any discussion?
Manager's report.
Manager's report. Okay. Clerk call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Brandy? Yes. Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, remind me when we get to that point of the meeting, somebody.
Will do.
So I'll just follow the iPad here generally. So, okay, that brings us to voting to approve the meeting agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, we have two changes. Public hearings, there are none. Bid awards, item A is item 19-182, solid waste baler replacement. And that's Public Works Director Cotta recommends award of the solid waste baler replacement RFP to Recycle Systems LLC for an amount not to exceed $535,327. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Second. Oh, sorry.
Okay, but the motion was made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Stanton Gregor. Discussion? I have a couple of questions if no one else does. Maybe Director Cotta can answer them for me. Looking here, I think it's on page 5, mentioned something about the accent wire tie. There'll be a gentleman, Bobby Fields of Accent, will be on site during the installation, startup, and training on the wire tie. Is this a new wire tie, or is this the same one that we purchased a number of months ago?
Yeah, this will be reusing the one that we recently purchased.
Okay, so he'll just be tuning everybody up on his operation with a new baler then?
Yes, he'll be here to ensure that it's reinstalled properly and working in concert with the other portions of the system.
Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion? I guess I had one other question. I know we talked about this earlier, the foundation. Has there been a analysis of the foundation of the old baler where this new one will be installed? Is it in adequate shape or won't be needing any modification?
Yes, I met with Alan Murph, who designed the facility 20-odd years ago. He came up and looked everything over. In his opinion, it's all sound and fit for reuse.
Perfect. Thank you. If there's no other questions, will the clerk call? Oh, Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we originally talked about this new baler, we talked about this would be meeting the needs and the demands for the community for maybe the next 5 or 10 years. Does this meet all those things, or is it just going to last us for a couple of years, or what's your lifetime?
I think this unit will have a minimum operating life of 20 years. And yeah, it's going to meet our needs for that time period, foreseeable needs.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Clerk, call the roll.
Taylor,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Randy. Yes. Kurt,
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Replacement of the new baler is on the way. Next bid award item is B, it's item 19-183. It's for a Caterpillar 320 excavator. And Public Works Director Cotta recommends award of the Caterpillar 320 RFP to MC Machinery for an amount not to exceed $179,250. Entertain a motion to approve this request.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made, I believe, by Member Mucci and seconded by Member Lim. Any discussion? Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for Director Cotta, what is this, I know you have it in here, but for the folks at home, what does this piece of equipment do?
This is our mainline excavator. We use it for a variety of things, trenching, any deep digging. If we have a sewer break, we need to dig down 15 to 20 feet. This is the machine that we'll use. We use it for sorting rock at the quarry. We use it for building wall. Sanitation department uses this unit for stacking cars, for compacting into open tops. Really is a all-purpose heavy-duty machine, and yeah, we. Well, I don't know what else I can add there. So.
Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So is the current piece of equipment we have, is it no longer working, or?
It's in the terminal stage of its career. The proposal that was made during the last budget cycle was to basically retain that unit and keep it at the landfill and let it live out its days up there. We've had a couple breakdowns on it during the last year, and so I'm not sure how much longer it's going to be with us, but if this newer unit is approved, that will take over primary duties, and the old one will be stationed up near the metal pile where it will ultimately end up.
Okay, any other questions?
Mr. Mayor?
I didn't see, Member Walter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Chris, so the one that we have up there is just totally wore out. Have you looked into what just repair costs on that would be versus buying this used machine? Because this one has no warranty on it. So have we looked at what it would cost to put new cracks or whatever's worn out?
We did, and I can't remember those figures now. Maybe Carl can correct me if I'm off base here, but I think it was $15,000 to $20,000 worth of repairs that were needed to make it suitable for regular duty again in the ways that we need to use it.
So this follow-up question, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
So is this one here then is going to take the place of that one when we need $15,000 or say $25,000 worth of repairs on this other one? We're going to spend $179,000, $250 for a used one from somebody else?
Yeah, well, when you talk about repair costs on the old one versus the cost of the newer machine, you're also buying a lot of reliability into that equation. The old machine, we could sink 15, 20 grand into it. We wouldn't have something we can necessarily depend on in the middle of the night when we have a water break. So, yeah, I think it's money well spent.
Any other questions? I have a couple. Kind of hinging on what Member Walhooter was talking about, the repair of the old machine versus buying this used machine with doesn't have a warranty on it. How many hours do you think are on the engine on the old machine? I mean, is it?
I believe it was 5,700. It's in that spreadsheet I sent out over the weekend, and Carl may know if that is hours on a rebuild or the original engine, or may not. Sorry to put you on the spot there, Carl.
I'm just kind of curious, and I also was curious, I didn't see it listed in the detailed description of this new 320 that we're talking about. How many engine hours are on it? Has there been any on-site inspection of it besides the people that own it in Ohio? Just kind of get an idea. It looks new in the picture. It looks a lot better than what we have, but then again, it's back to how many engine hours and how much use, and with no warranty, I just wondered how dependable it would be.
Yeah, it's 3,600 hours, basically, and it's been used fairly light duty. It's from a general contractor. They didn't do any heavy duty like quarry operations or anything like that with it. It's we have not had an inspector per se go into a survey of the machine. Our regional cat dealer here is the one that's arranging this purchase and offering the machine up, and they've vetted it and feel pretty good about it being in very good condition and being a reliable unit for us in the future.
Okay. Any other discussion? Member Lynn?
Yeah. Did I hear you say that the present machine is on a rebuild? Is that where the hours are on a rebuild?
I believe it was rebuilt at some point, but Carl and I, neither one could confirm that right now. I do know it's had major work done to it in the past. Hydraulic pump's been replaced at least once. The turbo's been replaced at least once. I'm not sure about a complete teardown of the engine. I'd have to look a little further back in the records to be able to tell you that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions? Clerk, call the roll.
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Mark,
No.
Jay,
Yes.
Kurt,
No.
Randy. Yes. Taylor.
No.
Passes
Okay,
4-3.
the request to purchase the Caterpillar for $179,250 passes on a 4-3 vote with myself, Member Norheim, and Member Walhooter, I believe, voting no. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, and that is persons to be heard. Is there anyone in the audience today that wants to speak to any item on today's agenda? Please step forward. We'll start over here in the back, and then we'll work across. Had to pick somewhere to start, so please state your name and who you represent, and we're going to limit it to 5 minutes.
You got it?
I'll try.
I'm Cynthia McDonnell, and I'm a member of the Library Board. And I understand that I'd like to speak about privatizing the library. I understand that it's been changed slightly, but I have several serious concerns about the idea of privatizing our public library. First, under privatization, public money would be used for a business whose transparency and accountability are not clear. What would be the company's profit margin? How would it impact the services that the library provides? Private companies are profit-oriented, whereas public libraries are accountable to the public for the money they spend and the way that they use those funds. In addition, if a library were to be controlled by a private company, there may be hidden and uncontrolled costs. Another concern is that there would be a possible loss of involvement with foundations, nonprofits, and friends groups. Our library currently receives multiple grants to supplement its funding. Privatization under a for-profit company may jeopardize the ability of the library to receive any extra grant funding or for the Friends of the Library to contribute funds to the library. Another concern would be the risk of losing community involvement in our library. Under a proposed privatization, would a library board continue to exist, and would it continue to have the authority and responsibility it currently has? Decisions about library service, operations, and budget would be transferred from the public sector to a private for-profit company. In 2001, after considering the issues of outsourcing and privatization, the American Library Association Council voted to adopt a policy as follows. ALA affirms that publicly funded libraries should remain directly accountable to the public they serve. Therefore, the ALA opposes the shifting of policymaking and management oversight of library services for the public to the private for-profit sector. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Please step forward, state your name and who you represent.
I'm Barb Fish, and I'm also on the library board, but representing myself as well. I don't have any remarks that I planned. I'm just trying to get my head around privatizing or possible alternative funding for the library, what that means and what the consequences, both intended and unintended, are. And I think Cindy stated a lot of those very well. And as I think about it more, I might want to send a letter or whatever, but I don't get it, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is I don't know why we would change what is working so well in the community and is a vibrant part of the community. So that's really all I have to say.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. If someone else in the back row wanted to testify, please step forward, state your name and who you represent.
Hello, my name is Joshua Adams. I represent myself. I'm a property owner here in Petersburg and the husband of Lisa Schrammick. I'm sure she'll want to testify as well. We're all here pretty much so far to talk about the library, as far as I know. A few noteworthy exceptions. A lot of us were shocked to see it on the agenda today for discussion. I had a hard time imagining who would want to lease out our library, what for-profit company would, and I'm doubtful as to what they would do with it. So I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt here that this is just kind of a wake-up call and see if we're all awake. Well, some of us are. Petersburg isn't like a lot of other communities in southeast Alaska because we haven't compromised or sold out what our ancestors built. That we would even be considering the privatization of our library or any other of the public services that we offer is dangerous. It's a slippery slope toward losing our community services to corporate greed. Democratic socialism, the same economic model that makes Scandinavian countries so successful as they have been throughout the last century, is the economic model that built Petersburg. Citizens own the property, the boats, the houses, the businesses, or their wives do. The government runs the public services. The electricity, the water, sewer, landfill, recycling, swimming pool, the school, and of course the library. It's a system that was put in place by your ancestors because it's a system that works, and it's what makes Petersburg special. Democratic socialism takes into account that when you say yes to one thing, you say no to another. You can't close one door without opening another one. If you privatize something, you capitalize it. I want you to think about what I just said. That means that you don't get to walk back in any hour that the library is open and get free access to help with your passport, your visa, free computers with scanners, internet, copies for 10 cents a page. This cost me 10 cents to print today. Our public library also gives us community space access with quiet meeting rooms, classes for all ages, especially for teens and young children, and calm places throughout the library. Not to mention that our public for all ages, especially teens and young children, can roam there, and it's a good place to get out of the house. It's a hub for nonprofit projects and services. Our public library is the only place where you can go 6 days out of the week, take your kids, take your computer to log on to free internet, or just sit quiet. If it is privatized, all of that could be jeopardized. The reason I'm here is because I would like to reiterate what a lot of folks who spend a good deal of time thinking about this would like to say about our community. It's my hope that suggestions like this one do not crop up in future assembly discussions. This is kind of a test, gang. Our bond for the library will be fully paid up in just 8 more years. We're halfway to paying off our library facility, which was mostly funded by grants and the state. Asking a third party to privatize our library now will be like me going to the recorder's office and putting someone else's name on my property title just because he promised to pay my land taxes. You don't give up your rights to a property just to pay off a mortgage. Share your community, but never the self-determination or autonomy of your government. This is the difference between Norway and England right now. I urge you to take stock in yourselves. The worst government in the world is still a better administrator than a corporation. If we need to pay more to have what we have here in Petersburg, then raise our taxes. Last year you raised my land taxes by 30%. You won't see me complaining about that. And if to raise them again to keep the library open, then do so. No one here should be contesting their taxes now, seeing what is at stake. But keep our library open in public. Keep our school open and fully funded. Keep the swimming pool open. Never compromise what you believe in. Never share what your ancestors built with a private entity, least of all, a greedy corporation that has no vested interest in the health of Petersburg. And this is a storm. It will pass. Petersburg is the best place to live in all of Alaska. Arguably one of the best places to live in the world. When I hear people talk about defunding our school or cutting back on public services, or worst of all, privatizing our public services, I think of all the austerity measures that caused European countries in the last century to cut back on public resources, thinking it a good way to make ends meet. In every case, with regrettable outcomes. Okay, I'm almost done. Throughout history, austerity measures have never worked in the way that they were intended. They always backfire, creating larger problems and more of them. It becomes a race to the bottom, and once you start down that path, it's very hard to turn back. Remember, we don't live in Petersburg because of the weather. Democratic socialism is why Scandinavian countries have prospered throughout the last century. Fishing is a voluble economy and we're isolated. Our state government has abandoned us, as predicted. We're on our own in this one, but times have been worse before. The original inhabitants of this town founded Petersburg as a fishing harbor with a glacier. With it, they built a sawmill, continued to grow even after corporate monopolies drove its first cannery into bankruptcy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else in the back row that would like to testify? Okay. I hate to cut anybody off, but if few people want to testify in 5 minutes, it's a while to get your point across. So, thanks.
Hi, my name is Lisa Shremick, and I'm here to speak for myself. I'll be brief. I just feel that it's a high concern when we're starting to think about the idea of privatizing the library. I guess I think of my own recent experiences in utilizing library services as a teacher who's not currently teaching and who has to gain 6 credits every 5 years to maintain a professional level degree. I use the library highly in the last 3 months to make that happen. Currently I don't have a printer at my home, but I do have the benefit of having internet services and computers in my own home. However, about a quarter of people in the United States and more than that in rural areas don't actually have computer access or internet access in their home. And the library is really the only place to provide those kind of access. that type of access. And I think if you're looking at the creation of giving over the control or the creation of the libraries and services and its access to a private company, then you're trading one for the other. You're trading access for all people who don't have the finances to provide those services in their home for somebody to come in and pull profit from those services. And you're basically excluding people who rely on those services and that access the most. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. So, is anybody in the back row left to testify? Or we'll move, I've never done it like this before, but it seems easier, just the next row forward. Anybody? The gentleman with the sweater, did you want to testify? Don't recognize you, so can't call you by name.
My name is Carl Holland, and I live at 605 South Nordic, and I have a request in for land use. My request is perhaps mundane compared to some of these others, but the unused portion of Neptune Street that runs behind my home, I would like to place it into a gravel so that we can have flat access into our house and a place to park our vehicles off the street. So what I'm asking for is a short span of Neptune Street to allow me to put on a gravel base there. And I've already been through the first section of this, and I hope that you'll see that favorably. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody in the row? Alice, do you want anybody to testify?
Hello, I'm Amy Anderson, and I'm speaking on my own behalf. I don't approve of privatizing the library, but I'm also here just to talk about Parks and Rec user fees, any change on that. I don't want any change where there's less oversight or comment time from the community. So I'm just here to say I think we should keep it the same way it is now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Anybody else in that row want to testify? Mr. Tremblay or...
Bill Tremblay, live at 9.6 Mile Midcoff Highway. Reflecting on the discussion regarding the likelihood there might be some looking at privatization of the library. I guess the thing about it is the library is public access. The access is free. It doesn't depend on somebody to have money in their pocket to be able to have access to information. This is probably one of the most important things that we can provide in a community is the access to good information so they can make good decisions. It's a way for people to grow in how they are as a person and learning new things or to help them to get things done in their home. It's important that people understand our history and where we are, how we got here, and where we're going in some of the future discussions. I don't know what privatization would do to improve that, except to put something at the door requiring that somebody have to pay some kind of a fee to be able to have access to information that should be free and available. Not everybody has access at home because not everybody has internet or can afford TV. The public library is free access for everybody and should remain that way. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Okay, move to the next row. Gentleman in the red shirt, did you have your hand up to testify?
Yeah, I'm Brian Dreisbach. I represent the Public Safety Advisory Board and personally myself. And we had a meeting last week and we just presented a letter of support for 3 items here to the city on that. And our first support would be the replacement of the engine number 5. And since that engine already has replacement costs already in the coffer, there's been money being paid in every month for years for that replacement there. That engine resides out here at Scalberry area, and after having a conversation with the fire department, the chief and stuff, that engine rolls on a call, and it only has a driver on it because of its safety issues and all of that, and its age. It's I think it's 28 years old is what they recollected. So on there, so as a board and myself personally, we go ahead and have the board approve the replacement of engine number 5 into our EMS system on that. And then the second item that we talked about was support of the EMS position, the coordinator position, get that new hire just because of the lack of number of volunteers and the training requirements that go on and stuff like that. So we, as a city, we won't want to get behind on that. And then, right now we require, we're taxing our volunteers a lot there, and then also trying to keep up with the training standards there. And the third one was the replacement of the sergeant position on the police force here on that. So we also supported that position too. And there were some good reasons in that. Chief Kerr presented those positions, but those on that is that the overtime rate has already gone way over his overtime budget, and by putting that position, that'll help cut that back. And there was some other stuff that go along with that. But so the Public Safety Advisory Board supports those three items there. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. And we'll just work right across the row there. So.
My name is Devin Bennett, and I am here to represent the Public Safety Advisory Board also. At our May 3rd meeting, we had 3 important public safety concerns that we spoke about. I'm going to touch on them just briefly. On the topic of the unfilled fire EMS position, the board heard from Fire Marshal Weldy. He spoke about the need for an additional paid support staff for both the Borough Department and for the volunteer organization. As it stands, one of the 2 paid positions at the department is currently taking the role of 2 full-time jobs, which, as we all know, is not a sustainable task for anybody. Filling this position would not only help the workload of the current staff, but would have a positive effect on the recruiting and training of the volunteers that our community depends on. After hearing his information, the Public Safety Advisory Board voted unanimously to recommend filling this position. On the second topic is the one of the unfilled sergeant's position for the PD. The board heard from Chief Kerr. He spoke about the inflating costs of overtime and the burnout that comes with overtime. Because of the increased cost of not hiring this position, and because of the quality of life considerations for the existing staff of the PD, the Public Safety Advisory Board again voted unanimously to recommend filling this position. The third topic, if you don't mind, is not related to today's comment, but I'd like to touch on it real quick if you allow me. The third topic we spoke about was concerning the Fire Department's motor pool fund. It was brought to our attention that there are 2 emergency fire apparatus that are continuously being pushed back for replacement. Fire trucks are life safety tools that are depended on for conservation of property, the conservation of life for residents of Petersburg, and the conservation of lives of the volunteers in the department that we are depending on to be there when we need their help. We should also mention the tremendous insurance savings of our community due in part to these apparatus. It is standard practice to replace these emergency rigs every 15 or 20 years. Engine 6 is currently at 25 years old, while Engine 5 is currently at 28. So 28 years old for one of our emergency vehicles. Order fulfillment for an apparatus these days is approximately 24 months. The Public Safety Advisory Board voted unanimously to recommend, again, moving forward with the replacement of Engine 5 and possibly looking at the replacement of Engine 6 too. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Afternoon. My name's Jim Stolpe. I'm here representing myself, and I concur with the Public Safety Advisory Committee on all their issues. Speaking about the fire trucks, the ISO rating has to be important to both homeowners and the city as well, and that vehicle not being able, Engine 5, that vehicle not being able to have a full crew on board for those people in the area that it's required to sit is not really justifiable in today's age. So I hope you support the motor pool fund in at least putting that on their buy list. And I also would like to support the fact that we do need to have that second position at the fire hall, because the person who is doing 2 jobs just is starting to burn out, and the public doesn't need that, nor do the firefighters and EMS people need that. So I hope you support filling that position, and I do support filling the sergeant's position as well in the police department. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. So we're over to this side of the room. Anybody in the second row back want to testify?
Hi, my name is Annette Bennett. I first wanted to just say thank you guys. I know this is a really difficult time when we're talking about budgets and cuts, and everyone has an opinion about it, so I appreciate your guys' time. Speaking of time, our volunteer fire department has donated a lot of time to this borough, and I wanted to speak in support of filling that position for our EMS coordinator position. Our volunteers have saved our borough countless dollars by volunteering their time, and we're now asking you guys to help support us in this position. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Anybody in the front row want to testify? State your name and who you represent, please.
My name's Aaron Hagens. I represent myself. I have a couple things I'd like to address. One, starting with the library. I realize current budget issues are coming up, and that's why this was put on the agenda to be spoken about. It is a community access issue. I believe if you do privatize it, you run into a lot of the fears that a lot of people were speaking about today. But I understand where you're coming from. I would also say, in addition to just public around here, for fishermen, people traveling on boats, the cruise ships, it's also a boon to those industries to keep that public access. But instead of privatization, I would suggest maybe doing a publicly funded bond. Not through taxpayer dollars, but the best example I could think of was like a war bond from like 1950s era, where people actually bought a bond, something was set up where they'd get paid back. Just something for you guys to talk about when it does come up in the agenda. In regards to the EMS coordinator position, our night service is kind of taxed right now. We do have some people currently in the department who can respond during the day. That's covered well, but our night coverage is severely lacking. It's hard to take multiple night shifts, especially with most of our EMT ones aging out. There's really need to get good training in so we can get younger people in there to help take that load. So that's what I have.
Thanks for your testimony. Okay, next.
Jess Field, representing myself. I know about these meetings, covered budgets in college, journalism, covered these meetings right there. That's why I came to this town. August will be 4 years. I know I'm not here very long. But, you know, coming from Montana, Alaska's really cool. But this island's pretty hard to take. You know, the rain's pretty hard to take. The library was a comfort to me, a great comfort to me. Professionalism is one thing, your job is one thing. But a place to go on your private time, that's totally different. Again, I understand budgets. I don't know what the motivation this is. Don't really care. I just want to speak my piece about the library because I've been through the doors of that place hundreds of times. Sometimes I'm there twice a day. Lately I've been building a house. Wouldn't have been able to plan that without that library the way I did, as seamlessly as I did. Would have cost me a lot more money. I wouldn't have appreciated that. I would have got disgruntled at the process. Wouldn't have liked that. And like I said, I've been through that doors hundreds of times. My dad came to this town the first time. That was one of the first stops we went. And he went, whoa, this is cool. So I just have a question after my comment there. How many times have you been through the doors of that library per year? That's it. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else in the room that would like to testify? Well,
can I just say something?
a quick.
I want to thank all of you for listening.
Okay, thank you, Barb.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else in the room want to testify to items on today's agenda? Okay, we move to the next item on the agenda, item 8. This is persons to be heard on items unrelated to today's agenda. Is there anybody who would like to speak to an item that's not on today's agenda? Mr. Tremblay?
Just making sure there was another move to the podium here. Then again, Bill Tremblay, speaking for myself, regarding an issue that came to light this morning. Lo and behold, the Cake Road is up again. Why? Just why? Let's stop and think about this. The last time we had Federal Highways come in here and talk to us about the Cake Road, they told us specifically that if it didn't meet the purpose and need of the communities, they wouldn't move forward with it. They said that despite the fact that when they were here years previous, they had a purpose and need that they determined did not meet the needs of the community, yet they came back to us again with a revised purpose and need instead of just letting this thing drop. I did a little look. Last time they looked at this, it said it would raise the maintenance in Southeast Alaska and our area by $500,000. Over the last 4 years, we've had cuts to our maintenance to our state budgets as it is. Why would we want to add something that didn't meet anybody's needs and purpose and cost us more money? If you remember more in the discussions when the state representatives were here, they were saying, well, even though we're not going to provide you access from Mitkoff Island to Kupreanof, there is an expectation that your state people who are maintaining our roads on Mitkoff and the airport would be the ones most likely to have to maintain this. Why? I mean, this thing is a placeholder on the state STIP. Why is it even there anymore? It's federal money that could be better spent for supporting our ferry service and not supporting a road that shouldn't be built in the first place. Yeah, and I guess the thing is it's interesting that this whole new administration talks so much about fiscal responsibility, and you think about the feds and their talk about federal responsibility, yet we want to waste $40 million on a road that we've spent maybe close to 8 years looking at that said serves no purpose and shouldn't be built. What I would like to encourage the Assembly to do is to please write a letter to the state noting that a higher priority for the residents of this community and to the Southeast Alaska communities would be improvement of the ferry service beyond what is expected to be cuts at this point. Money should be spent where people want to use it, not because it's just sitting around. It's embarrassing, and I was really disappointed to hear that even come up in discussion today as it was proposed. So just please keep that in mind.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room? Oh. Got it.
Hello, my name is Tor Benson. I'm here representing myself. First, I'd just like to thank the Assembly for their time. Like others have said, I know it's a lot of preparation, and these meetings can be long, as the agenda looks like today. So, today I'm here to talk about improving the senior sales tax exemption card program. And so I know that's been a touchy topic, but basically I'm just here to make a suggestion on how to improve it, because the way I see it now, it's overly complex, and I think there's a lot of extra steps in it. So for brevity, I will refer to the senior sales tax exemption as Sstc. This winter, I worked at CFJ and CPA here in town preparing taxes, and for my interaction with the program, I've proposed improvements to the Sstc. As the voters made clear, the Sstc is a good program and a way to assist seniors in our community. I think the program could be administered more effectively and maximize its value by making a rebate program. And so by rebate, I just mean basically once an annual, instead of every time you go to the store right now, you get your card out, you write down your member, and then you guys tabulate. I assume the borough does at the end of the year. So I think a once annual rebate would be just a lot more streamlined, a lot simpler. I'd like to start by talking about the current Sstc program in Juneau. So they have two different sales tax exemptions. The first one is basically they have a card like we do, and that's just to use on groceries and utilities. And then they have a second, which is a rebate program, and that is for low income, and so that's $325 per person, per year, and so that's to help low income people. These two different sales tax exemptions on food and utilities, and another is rebate for sales tax paid to seniors, like I said. I think these two programs could accomplish the same goal in one rebate program, which I propose we do in Petersburg here. One factor that I think worth noting is that the Sstc vote was an up and down vote, and so basically it's just, do you agree that there should be like a senior sales tax exemption or not? Voters weren't able to specify what they thought would be the best program or best way to administer that. So there's no way to clarify or compromise. I think that left it to the Assembly to decide how to administer the program most efficiently. This has led to the improvement of the current system, but I propose we continue to improve the program by making it a once annual rebate, like I said. I'd like to explain a little more about my direct interaction with the Sstc. During the busy tax season, we get a monthly update of the seniors who have purchased Sstc cards. So some seniors live down south and they get here in March, and they might rebuy the card for this year. And when I'm preparing a bill, then I check the list that we get updated monthly from the Borough. And if the person's on that list, then I remove the sales tax. If they aren't, then I add it. Over the course of the tax season, I had 10 clients that had acquired their Sstc since the list was updated. When the client comes in to sign their returns, they let us know that they have purchased Sstc. With this information, we have to recalculate the bill, which takes me about 15 minutes. I have to change the invoice from our system, print 2 copies, attach the copy to the client's return, find a filed copy, and then calculate a 10% discount for prompt payment. I see this added complexity of the Sstc as costing businesses an unnecessary labor costs. I have also seen more than once a store customer forget to mention they are tax exempt, and the clerk has to rerun the transaction as tax exempt. The benefit that the seniors in our community are seeing is being diluted by the complexity of the current system and the cost of businesses to comply. Also, each store now has to keep a clipboard on the counter, and I'm sure the Borough has someone to tabulate all this information. The current system is also more apt for abuse. People will have their older relatives buy big-ticket items for them at the 6% sales discount. I've seen this firsthand. This skews the effectiveness of the program and amplifies the cost of the Borough unnecessarily. I believe the $100 application fee of the card is a reasonable administration fee, but it is also a regressive tax. The seniors in our community that need the senior discount the most see the least benefit from that compared to seniors with more discretionary spending. The $100 fee for the card might represent 15% of the benefit they receive from the Sstc, while a higher income senior, it only represents 3%. So that's like the definition of regressive taxes. Those that need it most get the least benefit. It helps those on very tight incomes, and I believe that's an unintended consequence of the program. What I propose is that we have a $20 application fee for a senior sales tax rebate program. So like I said, this is an annual program. I propose the rebate is $300 for single people and $600 for a couple annually. We prorate this rebate based on the number of months you are in Petersburg. As a senior citizen, you receive $30 a month and $50 a month as a married couple. So if you're here for 9 months, you get 9 times 30. If you're a single person, it'd be proportional. In order to qualify for the month, you have to be present in Petersburg at least one day, aka a 24-hour period in the month. If it is determined there is a fraudulent reporting of residency, you cannot participate in the program for 2 years. Another option, maybe that's less harsh, would be to prevent abuse, is for every month you misreport, you lose 2 months of the rebate. One paragraph left. The Petersburg public has made a statement in the recent sales tax vote that they want seniors to receive a sales tax reduction. I believe by mirroring and combining the 2 programs they have in Juneau, we can increase the direct benefit to seniors and make it less complex to the recipients, borough, businesses, and by having an annual rebate. And so just to summarize again, I would propose a $20 annual fee. It's $30 for singles per month, $50 for couples, and you have to be here for 24 hours. The benefits I see are simpler administration for borough, improved benefits to low-income seniors, elimination of business compliance costs, reduced fraudulent use of Sstc, simplification for users and caregivers, and much better idea. It's a much better, simpler, setup. You guys know exactly the cost of the program, whereas now, because it's 6% of all purchases, it can fluctuate a lot. So thank you for your time again.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the room that would like to testify on items unrelated to topics on today's agenda? Okay, seeing none. Move on to the next item, number 9, Board, Commission, and Committee reports. There's nothing listed there. Consent agenda is the next item on the agenda. There are 4 leases up for renewal. Sammy Parker and Leroy Newton is the first lease. Second lease is to Ocean Beauty Seafoods Incorporated. Third lease is a renewal to Alaska Commercial Electronics, LLC. And the fourth lease is to Piston and Rudder Service. These are all a 5-year renewal. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the 4 leases on the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Walhutter. So is there anyone that would like to talk about one of these leases separately? Okay, clerk, call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Randy? Yes. Taylor?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, consent agenda is approved. Report of other officers. That first one is item 19-188, land selection process update, and Liz Cabrera will give us an update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Assembly members. We still have not received a preliminary decision document from DNR, so that means that they have not completed reviewing our initial selections from 2016 and 2017. Over the last 6 months, every time I've contacted them, they said they're on the verge of releasing that. And so that was also the case about a month ago, the last time I spoke with them. So we've been on the verge for quite a while. But be that as it may, I did want to provide some information and let you know at least what we're thinking about in terms of what we think some of the initial response will be from DNR and how the borough should respond to that. Once DNR releases that preliminary decision, the borough has 30 days to respond in writing in order to ensure that we can continue along in this process. So that's a really short timeline for us to put together quite a lot of information and state a case. So I wanted to give you a general sense of what we're thinking our initial response is going to be and kind of the information that we're currently putting together to support that response. My sense is that the DNR is going to reject a number of parcels from our request. They're going to deny conveying to convey those parcels. Most notably, these are things like the uplands around the South Mitkoff Terminal, the uplands around Olson's Log Dump, Track C at Thomas Bay, which is where the sand and gravel pit are. These are all parts from our initial selection. Our thought at the moment is that anything that DNR denies that is truly VUU land that could be conveyed, we would comment back and ask them to reconsider that denial. There are some lands that they will deny that they actually cannot convey to us at all, which are legislatively designated lands. And there was some confusion in their original legal description and maps that they gave us, and so we ended up selecting some things that they cannot convey. And so for those lands, we should not pursue those any further. They can't convey them even if they wanted to. So we should just leave those on the table. But certain lands, we should object to that denial and ask them to reconsider. When they reconsider that, we need to prove that our interest in these lands is more than the state's interest. They get to decide what is their interest. And they get to decide what the criteria are. So it's a very difficult case for us to prove, but I certainly don't think there's any harm in trying on some of these, especially things that have been important to us in the past. For instance, at Thomas Bay, where we really rely on that area for our sand and gravel. I think we can make some reasonable cases to try and get that land. So I also included a couple of maps just to show you the initial selections we made and where we think that they are going to deny. So that is sort of part one of the discussion, which is what is coming up in the near future, hopefully. Part two is that we had so much land that we were able to select that DNR broke it up into all these chunks. So right now we're only looking at the first section, the first 16,000 acres.
The remainder of the land is broken up into 4 different groupings. They would like to know what we want adjudicated next. So what's our next set of priorities? And I would like to know how you would like to make that decision. You know, we don't have the land selection committee anymore. We could reconvene that group. We could also, you know, put together a list based on past discussions that I could bring to you and kind of identify, you know, here's another grouping that we would make our next priority for them to look at. Just a little bit of direction in that area would be helpful. Hopefully that was somewhat clear, and if you have any questions.
There's one part in your discussion, or your presentation, you said 12,000 acres, the original 12,000, you mean 1,200 or 1,500?
Oh, it's about 1,800 acres that they're looking at initially.
Right.
So they took our initial selections and then grabbed a few other selections that we made and lumped them all together, and that's kind of what they're looking at for the first round.
Oh, so they're adding to our initial selection?
Yeah, I don't really understand how they're grouping things, because initially it looked like it was just the things that we sent in originally, but as I'm going through it, you know, lot by lot, I noticed that they pulled in some things that we selected later on. So they're things that we selected, but they kind of decided, I think just to make it as a whole, you know, so for instance, in Woodpecker Cove area, as opposed to chopping it up, they kind of just took it as a whole chunk.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, see.
Okay. Remember, Lynn, you had a...
Yeah, I'm just commenting, is that when we looked at those lands, remember with the land selection committee, and the legal descriptions we had, many times they didn't match what they gave us and what we had. There was no match. And so we've been having, and Liz has been kind of pulling her hair out, so to speak, trying to get to say, is that the legal description out there on the ground that we have, and, you know, is this available? And in some cases they're saying, oh yeah, this is the right legal description, but what we're finding out it's not the right one. And so what they've been doing is making a whole bunch of switches on us in terms of what we can select. The second part of that is that I think Liz commented on it, but when we had the land selection committee, if you remember, we went back through that with priorities. And so that very first set that we've sent, I think, and Liz correct me, was our ones that we really wanted to have conveyed to the borough. And that's the ones I think that, and Liz has got the concern about, if I can add to what she's saying. And I think I agree with her from my perspective that we need to go back on some of those that we felt very strongly when we submitted it and challenge it. And the second set is when we had the land selection committee, they put together different priorities of what they wanted. And the second set, I really kind of think that we need to stick with what they spent a considerable amount of time on that, you know, with what we agreed to as a group with what those priorities were. It's kind of where I came from. Would you change what I'm saying, Liz, or would you?
No, the only difference is that the initial set that we submitted was based on that smaller acreage, and so we had, I think, about 1,300 acres that we could select initially, and so the committee really went through and made priority selections for that. But then after we finished that part, after the legislation passed, then we just kind of wholesale said, you know, almost everything, because to make up for that, for everything else that we could select. And so we didn't go through quite as critically in the second round because there just was a lot of acreage to select, and we just took larger chunks. So I think that this first set that they're looking at really represents that committee's priority areas. Now, the question is, what's our second set of priorities, I guess?
So you said there's 4 or 5 lumps of property or land they're going to try to give us, and they're described, obviously, what parcels are in there. Have you had a chance to look at what they're proposing those sections to be made up of?
Yes.
So that would help prioritize what we'd want next, unless, I would think, wouldn't it? I mean, group 1, group 2, or whatever. Is that making any sense? depending what's within those groupings of land?
Yeah, I don't know if we want to follow their groupings necessarily.
Well, that's what I guess what
Yeah,
the question
I don't, and I don't know that that's necessary for us to do either, you know? I think, from my perspective, I think we should pick what is most important to us and not worry really how they lump things together, you know?
You'd think they would give us all of what's remaining.
Yeah, it's not that way.
You know, interesting, huh? Sounds like we'll have to have our legislators talk to DNR again. Member Walhitter?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so Liz, what you're asking for us is a recommendation on what to do next? Is that what I hear?
Basically, yeah.
Well, then
What would you like me to, how can I help you make a decision here?
Yeah, it's on the item.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion then that we reinstate the Land Selection Committee.
Is this an action item on the agenda? It's kind of just a presentation, but I think we need to bring it back.
Okay.
At another meeting before
Yes,
we
I'm
take
sorry.
action on it.
I think you are correct. It's not technically an action item.
Right, so it gives us time to digest the information a little more than the 5 minutes we've been discussing it here. It's a big topic for the borough. So Liz, maybe between now and the next meeting, you could present us with the information that DNR is giving you for the, I mean, I'm confused now that I thought we were going to get the initial allotment, 1,200 acres, whatever, and then the remainder that the legislation gave us, that was all coming next.
That's not the way they've organized it, yeah.
Have you had any communications with Randy Ruero and Senator Stedman's office about this proposal that DNR is presenting us with now?
Well, I think that was originally outlined back last year when, they said the selection was so large that they didn't want to handle it all at once, and so they broke it up into sections. But they decided what those groupings were. I don't think that should necessarily bind us or restrict us in how we proceed. I think they need to know, if we're going to do it in groupings, then we should just pick out what is the next group that's most important to us.
Makes sense to me, and what land is going to be in that group. It sounds to me like we should have some kind of a public meeting about this, or I don't know what you would call it. Yeah. Member Lynn?
Well, I was going to suggest, I think Liz has, from when we had the Lands Committee, and Liz has probably the best handle of what we had as the list to start with and how that's broken down has changed over time. And my suggestion is that we have Liz put her recommendations together for us, come back with a proposal.
She does have the most knowledge on the topic. Member Bucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, we're just looking to get a list of your recommendations for us to proceed with based on the original Land Selection Committee's priorities.
Right, all the selections are made, it's just a question of rearranging them in priority, right? Yeah, so if you want me to do that, I'm happy to do that for your next meeting. If you want to go a different path, then, just let me know what that is.
Okay. Interesting. Thanks for your presentation.
Yeah, sorry it's so confusing, but that is the nature of it. So.
Well, DNR is probably trying to make it as confusing as they can. They weren't too happy to see the legislation pass in the first place. So, okay, with that report being done, it's time for Member Lynn to give us a SEPA update.
Yes, I have two items I'd like to talk about. One is the payback on the diesel rebate for our burn last winter. I had a motion on the table at the last SEPA meeting for the payback. And that motion got tabled, and that's for folks who are listening. That's over $400,000 plus of money to come back to the borough. It was tabled because the discussion centered around how that would be expensed as part of SEPA's accounts. It's never been done before, and they wanted a pause in there. Essentially, the attorney wanted to pause, as I would say it, to take a look at that and to see how best it would represent, how best to expense that out of their accounts. I asked that be done before June 30th. And the next SEPA meeting is early June, which I'm hoping I have it back on the agenda, but that's where that sits right now. It was tabled, essentially, to have them discuss.
So that's the part where they pay us back for the diesel we burned?
That's correct.
And at the last meeting, maybe not the last meeting, since we're talking about the payback, March 28th, there was a meeting, and partway through the end of the meeting, like 50 minutes or 47 minutes into the meeting, I listened to it, there was discussion on the amount of power that we've got back from the southern community, from Swan Lake, plus the cost of the diesel. You feel that we're even?
No.
We're trued up then, the northern end, or do they, southern end still owe us the 24,000 gigawatt hours? That
Southern end still owes us. But that's the next issue I wanted to talk about. Thank you.
Okay. Because I listened to it, and it sounded like we were okay with what they've paid us back so far. I guess that would include
they paid us back what they could at the time. But the question is, and we set the guide curves for Swan Lake at a certain point, but in the last meeting, and Carl, please jump in here if I'm out in left field or if I head that way. Where we went with that is that we set the guide curves so that as Swan came back online, since it fills faster, that they would be sending more power north and allow us to put more water into Tyee. At the last meeting, they decided that they wanted to change that guide curve to allow more water into Swan to protect Ketchikan. And changing hats, in Ketchikan's defense, is they have one serious problem with some generators, and then they have problems with DEC meeting air quality, and that's a whole nother air quality standards. And so they only could run those generators so many hours, and so they wanted the backup out of Swan to take care of the problems that they were associated with. And that's kind of where that's set. So we didn't get all the money, we didn't get all the payback that I think we should have. And that's back on the agenda for June.
Okay, so that'll be discussed again?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes. And that's my view. There was obviously some other folks who may have different views on that.
Remember, Mucci, you have a...
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the $400,000 is just for diesel, doesn't have anything to do with overtime or shifts?
It includes everything, I think, except the oil that we burned. And that was, frankly, oversight on my part, maybe, that I didn't realize it took so much oil for our generators.
The lube oil for the...
And it does include the others. The one other topic I want to talk about is for the operations plans for the next year. This one here, I asked to put on the agenda to relook at how we've been doing business and what the protocol or policy is related to both Tyee and Swan, and at what point under the intertide do we stop sending power and protect the interests of Wrangell and Petersburg? And I asked to relook at the policy decision on that. And that discussion's been going on. It's been very interesting. And if you allow me just a minute, I wonder what came out of that is that the long-term next year's weather forecast calls for very warm, dry summer year. And so the experts have said that when we went through and looked at it, and the amount of power that we and Wrangell will need, essentially takes all the water out of the reservoir. So there will be no water going south until we reach a certain stage. That goes back to a question I asked. And so if you allow me just to show you quickly on the board the concept of what they were looking at, or what we were looking at. Again, Carl, jump in if you look at, and Tyee's dedicated to Wrangell, Petersburg. All the water out of there, all the power that's developed for the public here. But if you look at the reservoir, and if you look at it, we started in April of this year, and we go to April of next year. And use a concept rather than that. And we're looking at the water level in the reservoir. And we started, FERC, our FERC limit is at this point. In other words, at that point, we can't sell, we have to shut it down. There's nothing, we can't do anything. The board has in the past, and Mark, jump in there if you can, has set the guide curve here, would shut it down at 1960. In other words, this is the level of the reservoir at that time. Is that we would shut it down at that point, and then we look at it. Right now, we brought it down to, I think it was 1955 is where we ended up until we started refilling. But what's happened is we're starting way down here now, and we're starting to refill. And what we're looking at is that this guide curve now, we're looking at totally dedicated to Wrangell-Petersburg. Is that we are going to need, as it starts filling and comes around, and it's going to drop off back down here again in here. But we're going to have to store, in order to protect our interests for next winter, when I say our interests, Petersburg and Wrangell, is that we've got to build this way up in order to have enough here to be able to go back down through next winter. And that's what we're wrestling with right now, is that where should that line be? And how should we do it? And is there a point, the question then, when I change hats and you put on a SEPA hat, is at what point then, if we go above that, if we were able to spike it up, like for that, can we sell that power back down south? And that's the question that's is on the table right now, and that's the question that the board's going to have to wrestle in June. Right now, I like the concept that they've come up with very much. Whether that's the right lines or not, I'm not sure yet. The other part of that is that Carl has put together and sent to them a 3 or 4 page memo of different questions, some of which the mayor has asked, here, and some of them, that we need to answer about what happens if we have to drop our own, the power coming out of our own hydro site to do something. Are we protected? Just that. And those are some of the questions that we're now wrestling around, just for conceptual purposes here. That's what. This issue is on the table for a vote in June.
Currently, are we not receiving power from Swan Lake being sent north over Swan Time?
Not coming north. No, we're running right now. I may be wrong. Are they sending it now? They weren't a week ago.
I thought that was the operation plan for starting this week.
Swan Lake's being used right now, but it's all going to Ketchikan. All the power is going to Ketchikan.
Okay, we aren't getting any from
the intertie is open right now, so there's no power going north or south.
And Tyee is drafting 1/3 of a foot a day still, or?
It actually went up about 1.5 feet this weekend. I think we might have finally made the turn. And,
starting to melt?
And yep, it looks like it's heading in the right direction.
Good. Okay, I didn't see that report. All right, perfect. Any other questions of Member Lynn or Carl on this? Okay, that brings us to real property tax roll certification. Annually, we need to, it's required by the Petersburg Municipal Code, delivery of the assessment roll must occur on or before the first meeting in May. So here we are, first meeting in May. Attached, please find the 2019 total assessed valuation of all real taxable property in the Petersburg Borough. So we need to approve this or accept this tax roll, I believe is our, what do we do, Debbie?
It's been delivered to you now.
Okay, so that's good. That's all we need to do.
Yes.
Okay, deliver, we don't have to approve. Perfect. That's easy. Okay, mayor's report, fairly short. First item on is Congressman Young visited Petersburg on April 16th and 17th. The reason for his trip was to come and visit with the Hammer family and celebrate the legislation that he had passed to protect their cabin on Petersburg Creek from the Forest Service. It's leased land, and when Ken Hammer, the father, passed away, it was in his name. So they were told by the Forest Service either tear it down or we will. So Congressman Young got that reversed, and it was for their cabin specifically. I thought it might be for more cabins around the state on federal land, but they're working on that now, our congressional delegation is. So anyway, he met with myself, Assembly Member Lynn and Merle, and the manager. He also went and visited with the CEO and some staff at the hospital to talk to them about their plans to build a new hospital or refurbish one we have. And he also took a little tour of Icicle Seafoods and got to watch him process roll-on kelp, which he'd never seen before. So then he had a barbecue for him with the Hammer family, and he had a great time while here in Petersburg. I was asked by Petersburg medical staff to mention this since CEO Hofstetter couldn't be here today. The medical center is having another community cafe, and that will be on May 9th at 6 p.m. in the Assembly Chambers this time. And the focus will be the Alaska legislative budget cuts to health care and the impacts to the medical center. The public is encouraged to attend to discuss potential forward-thinking health care strategies for Petersburg. On another note, some of the people that have been invited to Mayfest in a week or so won't be able to make it. Sounded like Governor Dunleavy was going to make it, but his scheduler said he won't be able to make it. And I think I mentioned earlier that Senator Murkowski can't make it. I think Senator Stedman and Senator Donnie Olson will be here. And that's all that I know of. The Admiral Bell from the Coast Guard can't make it. Wanted to make him have the prior obligations. So that's all I have for the mayor's report. That brings us to the manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to send out congratulations to longtime Harbor staff member Jim Birch, who retired on May 1st. The community, as well as the Harbor Department, thanks him for his many years of service and wishes him well. Reminder, launch grant permits are due June 1st. Reminders are going out in the mail in May. Get those into the Harbor. Harbor staff participated in a port safety and security meeting with the captain of the port on Thursday, April 25th. Some discussion on upcoming Homeland Security issues and Coast Guard support available to our community. Coast Guard is focusing on increased issues due to growth occurring in the tourism industry. Captain White reported that tourism in Alaska was up 20% in 2018, and they're expecting another 13% on top of that this year. Our first tour ship was actually arrived on April 29th. The early schedule is on the Borough website and was in the April 18th edition of the Petersburg Pilot. Thanks to AT&T, some work we installed to upgrade the municipal building telephone system software on Tuesday, April 30th at about 5 a.m. in the morning. There were some issues with voicemail being inactive immediately following the upgrade. It was resolved before noon. Healthcare, we're still kind of working through what we're going to be able to afford. Our initial quote to keep the same plan we had was going to go up 14.1%, or just over $239,000. We have pushed back a little bit and working with the hospital as well to try to see if we can come up with something a little cheaper. We've got a couple of quotes that look a little better, and hopefully that decision will be made this week, and we'll let the broker know. Jody will be attending a conference in Anchorage on June 6th, sponsored by AML. Our borough attorney is actually going to be there to represent some of our other clients, and this is all about online sales tax and what may be coming down on that. Since she'll be attending on behalf of several communities, we're going to all split the costs, so she'll be Jody's backstop, and we'll actually have the advantage of having the attorney there. We continue to have a big concern because our current sales tax ordinance is very complex. It may not be possible long-term to roll out a full online sales tax system in our community unless something changes. It's likely the senior sales tax exemption and the sales tax cap would need to be removed prior to taxing all online retailers. Those issues will be discussed at this meeting. So we may be able to collect it for a while, but at some point have to give it up if the state and all this gets resolved as far as the sales tax code. Lots of training in the police department. Chief Kerr attended the port safety and security meeting and the mass rescue operation review. Investigator Pop is attending the DEA investigator course. High-intensity drug trafficking area, paid for the course, travel and lodging. Officer Wachter attended the firearms instructor course and armor course in Sitka put on by AST and is now certified to conduct the police department's firearms training and maintenance on department firearms. Officer Wolf attended the FBI crisis negotiation class in Juneau, and this was also a free course sponsored by the FBI. Spring road maintenance continues. Crew is busy washing and sweeping streets and repairing potholes. We had some dry weather there for a while, and it gave us an opportunity to get some street grading done. We also did some topping material to several dirt streets where the surfacing had worn thin or disappeared. Harbor Department's replacement pickup, number 18, has arrived. Motor Pool is installing the lift gate and other upfit items prior to placing the unit in service. Annual household hazardous waste event is scheduled to take place June 1st and 2nd. Talk to Public Works, Sanitation, if you have any questions. Upcoming events at Parks and Rec include Lope the Loop 7K will be held on Saturday of the Little Norway Festival. Registration is now open. And our next triathlon will be on June 1st. This is operated in partnership with the Friends of Parks and Recreation, and more info to come on the time frame and registration openings. We have put out some information, but just as a reminder, starting May 1st, our facility hours at Parks and Rec move to 6 to 9 p.m. Tuesday through Saturday, closed Sunday and Monday. In observance of Little Norway Festival, we will be closed at 1 p.m. on Friday, May 17th, and only open from 6 to 8 for an open swim on Saturday the 18th. We're also closed at the Aquatic Center and basically the whole community center for 2-week period from 19th of May through the 31st. This is for maintenance. During this time, we're actually going to drain the pool, replace the in-pool lights, and multiple areas of the facility will be worked on from a maintenance perspective while the staff in doing a lot of that. ATS, who is our software control system for the HVAC system at the pool, came into town last week on a Wednesday, spent a couple of days training our staff on how to use the system and fix some of the sensor issues we've been having. They give us false readings or cause problems with the chlorine or the heating and cooling in the building. Water staff recently drained the treatment plant and performed the annual spring cleaning to prepare for the summer processing season. The Casino Street sewer is going to bid. This project will replace approximately 1,000 feet of sewer pipe and install 3 new manholes on Casino. Kind of repeat a little bit of what somebody in Berlin was talking about, but the hydropower lakes did come up with some of the spring rainfall, some of that cold weather, and then a lack of rain. We are losing water in Tyee. Sounds like that's turned around. I'm not going to read the levels because that has changed since now, but we are starting to see all 3 lakes come up. McMillan Jacobs has committed to responding to a request for a proposal for preliminary engineering through the construction on the Blind Slough Hydro refurbishment project. We got a proposal from them. I think Carl had some questions that we're going back to. We're hoping to get that contract amendment in front of the Assembly at the May 20th meeting so we can tell them and give them instructions to start moving forward. ADEC has been helpful in working with us on how to address any potential air quality violations on our diesel runs at Power and Light. The AIR program is focused on educating municipalities and empowering them with the knowledge of how the limits were arrived at many years ago in order to determine what level of diesel burn at the power plants is appropriate and in keeping with the current regulations. For now, we are under the permit limits and won't likely violate our permit this year. But Carl's working with our folks as well as ADEC folks to make sure that if we have to change something, we can. And just keep eyes out, folks. We got the line crew out trimming trees around lines in town, removing some trees in some spots. in order to limit return trips to the same locations year after year. That's why we are removing some of the trees and anything that's going to affect the lines in the right-of-way. Trees on private property that impact the lines will also be targeted, but discussions with property owners will take place before removal. Carl is working on a new policy and potential code language to kind of lay that out as far as Power and Light's approach to line clearing and the process used to remove the trees when appropriate. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the manager? Member Morrell?
Yeah, I would like to know how the borough fared in the negotiations with Icicle Seafoods over the approximate $500,000 Power and Light metering error.
They are paying us back in an agreement made with Icicle.
With the terms, or
what is it, Carl? About $10,000 a month. $7,000. Thank you.
for how long?
It'll take us roughly 5 years for them to repay.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the manager's report? Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Steve, you mentioned briefly about the finance director going to Anchorage and
yes,
talking about sales taxes and this, that, and the other. And I also see we're talking next up here about the sales tax ordinance update. And you mentioned that for us to collect online sales tax, we might have to repeal the senior sales tax exemption? Is that what I heard?
In a sense.
Okay.
Or just not collect it. What's going on is there was a Supreme Court case a year ago that said, yes, in fact, online retailers must pay sales tax. But there's a bit of a caveat. States must adopt a standardized sales tax model for that to apply to everybody. And that standardized sales tax model does not include what we do with sales tax. So Amazon has voluntarily been collecting sales tax here in Petersburg and throughout most of Alaska for 6 months, 5 months? Since January. So we've been getting a regular payment from Amazon that is just Amazon fulfilled items, not their third-party sellers. And we have no belief that that'll stop soon, other than if Alaska ever adopts the standard sales tax process, Amazon would have a very good reason to say, hey, we're only going to do it for those communities that are in line with that standardized sales tax ordinance. We are definitely not in line with that. At least from conversations I had with a couple of folks, that would give Amazon the opportunity to say, we're just not going to collect sales tax in our zip code. We don't know that for sure. May not know it for sure for quite a while. One of the reasons Jody's going up to Juneau for that it's not even a conference, it's basically a get-together of various communities here in Alaska with AML's help to kind of talk through all these issues and learn what each of us have learned, and come back with more information that will tell us, what to expect. It's a big deal. I mean, the community has voted several times not to repeal the senior sales tax exemption. I don't expect that to change anytime soon. I just don't want us to get used to collecting sales tax from Amazon and have it go away, which is a high possibility.
Member Wallheader?
I have a question for you, Steve, or maybe this might even be directed at Jody. Could you share what amount we've gotten so far this year from Amazon?
No.
Okay.
It's confidential.
It's what?
It's confidential. I mean, any business in town would be upset if I shared what they were bringing in with sales tax. So, no, I'm sorry, I can't.
Member Mucci? Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I just want to follow. I mean, at the end of the year, we know how much the community has collected in sales tax. I wasn't asking specifically who is, paying sales tax. I mean,
Right, but they're a single business, and it's private information. It's confidential information.
Okay. Well, I'm sure we're going to see that in our budget someplace. Extra
Well, it won't be
fund.
spelled out. It will be combined with everyone else.
Okay, I just want to know if this was something worthy of, if it's going to outweigh, the exemption from the seniors if we were to put them back on tax roll, that kind of thing. I was just curious. So, thank you.
Member Mucci, you got another question?
You, in the line crew clearing, trimming the trees around town, are there times that some of that work can be done by the private sector? Sir?
Carl, I'm going to jump in and answer, and then you please add on. The answer is yes in some cases. We're doing a lot of it here in town particularly clearing of we're cutting just branches. Trees we can take down if they're of a certain size and are not in a really dangerous position. For example, out the road a bit, we paid a local vendor to do a whole bunch of work on really large trees we don't have the equipment to deal with. So it's a case-by-case basis. Kind of depends on what what equipment we have, where the tree's located, the condition the tree's in, and whether or not we need to get a professional involved on some of the bigger stuff or more dangerous stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions of the manager on his report? Okay, we'll move to the next item, and we've got a little change in the agenda here. We're going to have a discussion item, and it's not privatization of the Petersburg Library anymore. It's on different ways to fund the library, basically. So, Member Norheim, you asked to put this on the agenda, so would you like to speak first to this?
Yeah, so basically, I'm kind of concerned about the state budget, and I know things like this keep getting deferred, and we'll talk about it later. But it's a significant amount of money that we're looking at losing here, and I keep hearing that the first things that are going to be on that chopping block are the library and Parks and Rec. Well, we don't want them to go away, right? So I just figured, well, they're already getting donations and whatnot, so what's the other way we can get funding from them? Well, you could privatize it, but it wasn't really so much privatizing as maybe finding somebody in town who could afford to purchase it, or even better yet, just donate a bunch of money to keep these things floating. Because, I mean, it benefits nobody to have the doors shut on these facilities. And more or less, it was kind of like trying to get the community to understand that there is a massive amount of money that potentially won't be coming here anymore. And everybody kind of needs to be aware of that. That was pretty much it. I just wanted everybody, because I see this platform getting used for that here and there. I guess pushing a point or informing public of various things. I didn't really know how to do that outside of here, but I mean, the privatization of it is, nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to buy the library. It doesn't make any money. I mean, it'd be a loss, so donate. Feel good about it, because it's not good for the community for the library to just disappear or just be shut. That's a fire hazard right there. And also, to the title there on the discussion item, that was obviously confusing for a lot of people, and I apologize for that because that was my fault for not, I guess, just writing that out properly. So
that's it. Okay, thank you, Member Norheim. Any other discussion on this topic? Sounds like we had a lot of public input today, and was not in favor of privatizing the library. Member Stanton Gregor?
Yeah. Let me pull up my notes here. And thanks to those who did testify today in regards to that. I admit I'm a little frustrated. You wasted a lot of time out of your day because of this poor wording of how this looked. Because obviously everything everybody said today I completely agree with. It is not supposed to turn a profit. The voters voted to fund a new library, so the idea of selling it or giving it to someone else it doesn't make sense. It's like the oxymoron to the term public library, public use, free use. The most vulnerable parts of our population, a place that can go and be safe and warm and read or look up whatever they need to online. Thanks everyone for turning out today to express their opinion on that. That's all.
Any other assembly members have comments on this discussion item? Okay, with that being accomplished, that discussion item, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we will come back and start with unfinished. Okay, we're all back. It's 22 minutes before 2. We'll start the meeting again. We're on item 14, unfinished business. We have an ordinance for third and final reading. This is ordinance 2019-02. An ordinance amending Chapter 4.28 titled Sales Tax of the Borough Code regarding the collection of local sales tax on internet sales. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its third and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Borough. Discussion? Clerk call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Randy? Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2019-02 passes unanimously in its third and final reading. Now we're under new business. The first item under new business is ordinance 2019-03. This is an ordinance adopting the budget for the fiscal year of July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. I'd entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 2019-03 in its first reading.
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Walhooter. Discussion. Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in this current budget, draft budget that we have, is there the amount in here for the study for long-term care and assisted living, that bid?
Through the mayor?
Yes.
No, it is not currently in this budget.
Mr. Mayor, so why wouldn't it be in this? Are we looking to do that this year, or are you still looking for direction from us? Or
It's later on your agenda is me asking if you want to fund that, and what we try to do would be a supplemental budget for this year. We have enough meetings left. Yeah.
Yes, or if it is approved, I would recommend, because it probably won't happen until next fiscal year, just amending the budget at the next meeting to put it into the assisted living department.
If the assembly votes in favor of it this afternoon, then it's a second reading of the budget and amend the budget to put it in into the budget, and we'll pay it for next year.
And I can't remember without looking further into the agenda what that dollar amount was, but
$20,400.
yeah, without travel.
Without travel, correct.
Member Mucci, you had another
yeah, thank you,
comment?
Mr. Mayor. And just, we heard from a couple of folks earlier on the Public Safety Advisory Board about, the 2 fire trucks that are coming up on 28 and 26 years. They're not on this year's budget, but are you looking for direction from us on how you would like us to bring these forward, or do we keep kicking the can down the street here?
Mayor, may I? Okay. And Chris will need to add in if I mess anything up here. So every year in the motor pool, there's a number of vehicles that come forward that are ready for replacement. We make an evaluation of that, and we make a determination on whether we think it needs to go forward or not. Both of those fire trucks, it was determined that they're fine the way they are, and not to move forward with replacing them this year. That clearly is different than what the Public Safety Advisory Board would like to do. So currently in your budget today, those 2 engines are not scheduled to be replaced in this upcoming budget. Clearly the Assembly can change that. So I don't need direction at this point unless you want to do something different than what I just said.
Well, I just wanted to say it sounded like it was a 24-month turnaround, so it doesn't seem like we'd even be paying for them in this next fiscal year. Perhaps something could go forward to the Assembly, making a decision on whether they want to go forward with them 2 years from now so we could get the process started.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. But if we order a fire truck today, it's going to take us 2 years to get it.
Exactly.
So if we wait 2 years, it's going to have to be 4 years. I'm just trying to talk myself through this process about if we're getting a recommendation from the chief, Public Safety Advisory Board, and this is kind of a life and safety insurance issue with the community, then perhaps one of these trucks should be moved to the front of the line on the motor pool replacement fund and kind of get this ball rolling, since it's going to take us 2 years to get it here.
Any member Norheim?
I would agree with Jeff. I think we should move forward on one of the engines, not two, and we can just have the new old engine moved out. If the money's there in the motor pool and it was put there to be spent on acquiring the new engine, then why not do that if we got one that's it's going to be 30 years old by the time we get there. Yeah.
These are, if I may jump in, these are big decisions. I mean, you're talking about a $500,000 piece of equipment. It's, again, it's one of those things where, I'm going to put words in Chris's mouth, but the review process that we go through is how hard a use is the vehicle going to see, what's our maintenance history, is it breaking or not, and, what's kind of the, ramifications if one of them goes down. And so, again, in our evaluation, it didn't need to be replaced. Clearly, the fire department and public safety advisory board see it differently. That's the assembly's call if you want to get into that. But, I don't know, Chris, can you add to what I said?
I was thinking maybe if we're going to have a discussion on a specific item in regards to the budget we're discussing, that's what we're on right now, and maybe there should be a motion to, if it's a desire of an assembly member to add that to the motor pool. If we're going to make a decision, that's what we have to move forward with. That's what we have to do to add to the budget. And before we get into too much personal discussion about a particular item, I guess it's not personal, but individual discussion. Member Ricci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I agree, but I'm just trying to sort out if, I'm not ready to put an amendment to the agenda at this point to suggest moving a replacement for Engine 5 into the budget today, but I'm trying to sort out if in 2 weeks we're going to be talking about this as well. Perhaps I could gather some more background information and see what this would do to the upcoming budget. It just seems weird to me that the fire truck leaves the building without firefighters in it, and they have to go to the fire in a different car. It just seems weird to me. They only have 4,000 miles on those things, but, if you get a fire at your house, you're going to want to be protected as best you can, and if we're scraping by just to save, I know it's a lot of money, but if we had a big fire and we weren't actively pursuing a new truck or whatever, it's just, for me, the public safety is kind of a big thing, and I can bring it back up at the next meeting.
Okay, unless we're going to make a motion to amend it, I think we should. Member Lynn?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment, is that I wouldn't be ready to vote on anything like that until we get a lot more information, because I wasn't even aware of anything going on until today. I'd need a lot more information to spend $500,000.
Correct. Chris?
I just wanted to provide a little information for everyone's, education on this issue, if you will. There were 2 engines that came up for evaluation this year, which means they were, essentially to look at whether they should be replaced or not. And both engines are in really good condition. Engine 5 and Engine 6. Engine 5 is getting pretty old. It's 28 years old, but everything works, and there's no mechanical reason, if you will, to disqualify that unit from service. There are other things that come into play. Just the age of the unit. I won't say it's an academic exercise, but it is an exercise to go through. How old do you want to let something get before you replace it? Do you want to wait till it's an antique, if it works right, or do you want to replace it on some sort of a schedule? We have taken the approach so far, in the last few years anyway, of, if something's working fine and likely to work fine in the future, then we'll extend it. The older of these 2 units was extended for 1 year. I think that was really just a reflection on its age. And we felt like because it's getting older, we probably need to take a look at it more frequently to make sure nothing's deteriorating and that we have a reliable unit. There's also an NFPA standard that comes into play. I think that's 25 years. 20 years. Okay. So we're past that recommended replacement interval. But again, our approach has been if something appears fit for service, and there's no issues, then we're going to leave it in service. There are adequate motor pool funds available. If a decision was made to replace one or both units, I think the fund could support that. I don't know if it could support any more than that. I think if you bought 2 new trucks, you would probably deplete that fund pretty much to the bottom. But anyway, like I say, that's just information I wanted to give to everyone, maybe give you a little bit more data to help you make a decision in the future on this subject.
Okay, thank you. So we're back onto the proposed budget for this fiscal year. Any assembly members have any personal or individual things they want to discuss on the budget? Member Lynn?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion to make a change, and here's my motion, if you'll bear with me. I want to remove the part-time funding for the information technology position, which is $49,514. I want to remove the EMT position, which is $96,147, for a total of $145,661. I want to add 30,000 of that back to the contingency fund, so that there is a contingency fund for next fiscal year. I want to take $10,000 and contract snow plowing to continue outside the service area 1. And the net of that, which is about $105,000, I'd like to go to reduce the increase in property taxes inside service area 1.
Okay, so that is a number of items. I guess we could vote on them all in a lump package, or maybe they should be individual. What's the clerk's? I think they should be individual.
Yes, individual would be best because maybe some will agree and some will not agree on others, so.
We'll start with your first one, Member Lynn.
Okay, the first one.
Just going to ask him that, yeah.
I'll move first to remove the part-time funding for the information technology position, $49,514.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Norheim to remove the part-time IT position with the cost associated with it at $49,500. Discussion? Member Stanton Gregor?
I was going to ask Member Lynn to expound on your why with that.
The why with that is that I don't see us filling that position in the next year with the budget situation the way we are. And we can still get the work, talking with Jody, we can still get the work done we need to have done. And so we can hold that till later time.
Thank you, sir.
I would got just a question for either the finance director or manager, whoever would answer it correctly or would have the answer, I guess. Half-time IT position, would that, if that was filled, would that enable that person for benefits, full benefit package as well?
Yes, it's actually been in the budget for a couple of years now, and it just hasn't been advertised, and I don't know if Steve would like to elaborate more on it. We do contract out with IT people based in Iowa, and they do a sufficient job, and if we need someone local, we've been contracting out with Devon. So we've been okay. It creates a little bit more work for the department heads, and so Steve is trying not to fill it just to decrease costs. But is there anything else that I missed, Steve?
That was my concern, was if
she explained it well.
If it ends up, if we hired this person and then if they would, after they retire, we'd be liable for paying benefits. I would assume we would, so all I wanted to interject. Any other discussion on the removal of the IT position from the budget? Clerk, call the roll.
Jeff?
No.
Bob,
Yes.
Brandy,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Okay, that amendment passes, so at this point, the IT position will be removed from the budget. Next motion Member Lynn made was, I believe, remove the EMS position.
Yeah, the EMT position for $96,147.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Morall to remove the EMS position from the budget. Discussion?
Yes. Here's my thinking on this, and I spent considerable time talking with the manager and with Sandy and others, is that the more I talk about, the more I learn about just the EMT position, our whole situation is changing. As Sandy says, we've got a considerable number more calls out than we've had before. We've had a significant drop in volunteerism. She's having a hard time getting enough people together to hold a course for EMTs, and I can understand that. In talking with a hospital administrator, the standards have changed to what we have to transport to for medevac and some other things. There's questions there of whether or not we're doing the right thing with Medicare and Medicaid funding. When we look at it, when I got done examining all this, is that I think what we need to do is that I'm not against, if we need to, is to fill that EMT position in the longer term. But what I think we need to do is I think we need to look at the entire business. But filling that EMT position right now does not solve the whole problem. It maybe solves half of it, but we need to look at the business model we have. And I think there needs to be some shift in duties. I think we need to look at compensation. I think we need to look at fees and the whole gamut of it, of how we're doing business. And that, I think, should be done in this next year and I agree with Sandy, we need relief and we need to do things differently. But right now, just funding that position and filling it doesn't do it for me. Thank you.
Any other discussion on this amendment? Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I disagree with Member Lynn, of course, on this issue. I mean, we've looked at fees, or the fire department has looked at fees. They've raised the ambulance fees. I mean, this is a position that hasn't been filled for several years, and this is not, by voting to eliminate this EMS fire coordinator up there, it's not doing anything to make things better by eliminating that position. There is some problems up at the fire department and the EMS that this person would help out with. You're still going to have to look at the business model of, the Public Safety Advisory Board thinks it's a good position to have filled. The fire chief thinks it's a good position to be filled. It's going to take us a while to fill this position, but I'm going to be voting against this amendment. I mean, I think if you've spent any amount of time up at the fire hall seeing what's going on or responding to a emergency call, the sergeant's position and the EMS fire coordinator, those are just your basic public safety issues that need to get addressed here in Petersburg. And if we're not going to fill those positions, then you're going to have a hard time getting people to volunteer. I mean, if you want people to volunteer, great, but there needs to be somebody who can help us with the problem, and this EMS coordinator is the position that would do that.
Any other discussion on this amendment? Member Stanberger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with the point that both Member Lynn and Member Mucci made in terms of looking at the term they used with the business model, the way we run EMS, EMT stuff. I know Sandy knows that also. That said, I'll be voting against the amendment today for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's just that important for, chiefly because I think it's such a critical piece of public safety, so I can't support this amendment. Thanks.
Any other comments? Member Noam?
I was wondering about, so leaving it in the budget, Does that mean we would start looking for this person?
If it passes all 3 readings, I would assume so.
And this...
The manager would like to, I mean, if you get direction from the assembly to fill the position, then that's what you would do.
Through the mayor, depending on the direction the assembly gives me. The assembly could elect to leave it in there, but say, Steve, don't fill it until we know about the state budget or whatever. You could give me specific instruction, give us specific instructions, or you can take it out. It depends on how what the will of the assembly is.
This is figured into the budget.
Yes, sir, it is. It's currently in the budget, as well as the sergeant.
So
yes.
If it was removed from the budget, it could be added as a supplemental after we see. My personal concern is that we don't know what the state's going to do. I know other assembly members, feel that we should just move forward, but I think it's fiscally irresponsible to fill a position and then have to tell the person we don't have the money. So I will be voting in favor of this amendment today. So that's my reasoning behind voting yes. Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
No.
Taylor?
No.
Jeff?
No.
Mark?
Yes.
Kurt?
Nope.
Okay, the EMS position stays in the budget with a 4-3 vote with Member Lynn, Member Borough, and myself voting against it, or voting for it, I guess. Next proposed amendment is to add $80,000 back into the budget in contingency money. Is that correct?
Let me back up. I want to add $30,000. I wanted to take of that 50,000, that 49 something. I want to take 30,000. I would like to take 30,000 of it and add into for a contingency. And I think we were told that you found 8,000 something.
Correct. I mentioned at the budget work session that the police department had overestimated their professional services by $8,000, and so I took that money and I put it into contingency.
Okay. And so I'd like to add, my motion is to add 30,000 more to that contingency.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Stanton Greiger to add $30,000 into the contingency fund. Any discussion? Member Mucci.
Sure, what is the contingency fund? Is that just a slush fund, money hanging around in case we need to go somewhere and need the money, or?
It's been budgeted at $80,000 for the last few years, and historically, if I understand it right, we've used about 40, and right now there's $0 budgeted for it. So we'd probably, at some point during the year, if we don't add some money into the contingency fund, would be doing a supplemental to put it there if we continue to do business as usual. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The chances are we're going to be coming back for a supplemental budget anyway. Why not just put it there as a placeholder for a supplemental budget?
So just to chime in, these things are usually pretty small that either a department head would have approval for or the borough manager. Anything big, would obviously go to the assembly anyway. But it's just there's just those little things that come up that, it isn't worth doing a whole big 3 readings of an ordinance for, can be handled in contingency. Take some time.
So you'd feel comfortable if we didn't add money into the contingency fund, is what you're saying then?
Well, it would be much easier to add money into the contingency fund.
I just didn't read into it. I didn't totally understand what you were saying there. Okay, any other discussion on adding $30,000 into the contingency fund? I guess it's a fund. Clerk, call the roll.
Bob?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
No.
Okay, on a 6-1 vote with Member Mucci voting against it, we passed to add $30,000 to the contingency fund. And what was your next amendment?
Next item, I move to take $10,000 of those funds and a contract for snow plowing of the roads that we've been doing outside of Service Area 1.
Private roads outside of Service Area 1?
The ones that we've been currently plowing that we agreed to when we formed the borough, that they proposed to take out of the budget this year.
Is there a second?
I'll second for the sake of discussion.
Okay, motion been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Stanton Greger, and the motion is, if I understand it right, is to add $10,000 to contract snow removal outside of Service Area 1. Member Roll?
I like the idea of continuing to plow out at Service Area 1, or in Service Area 1, but I don't think it's necessary to contract it out. I think often Public Works has enough time during their days, if they're not on the weekends, to take care of Service Area 1, and I don't think it necessarily needs to be contracted out.
Okay. And if that's what, I'm willing to amend the motion to say just that we continue the snow plowing of the roads, if that would help.
And so with the motion, in the amendment that you made, it was specific to roads outside of Service Area 1, so private roads inside Service Area 1 would not be plowed? I mean, now we currently plow them, right?
Yeah.
It's budgeted through this fiscal year.
Yes.
Okay, so...
May I respond, sir?
Yeah, clarify it.
Yes, sir. Currently in this budget, we stop removing snow on these private roads outside of Service Area 1. Okay. Outside of Service Area 1. We did that because we are taking a maintenance position out of Public Works that will be primarily doing maintenance and will do very little snow removal. So Public Works, in a sense, is losing a snow removal person. We are not addressing private roads inside Service Area 1 with this budget. I have asked the Public Works Director to start that process of, inventorying the roads, who owns what's private, what isn't, where we have agreements, and, we have that as a discussion for the Assembly in the fall, probably the earliest, because we want to do our research and make sure we bring it all back to the Assembly at that point. But it's, again, not in the budget you have now.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on this? Member Stanton Greger?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Steve. That kind of touched on the broader part of this that I was considering as far as equality of services between Service Area 1 and 2, so we don't feel like certain segments of our population are being treated more fairly because they're more convenient to handle. I don't know. I'm hesitant to approve the contracting of that at this point because we're still studying the inside of Service Area 1 road situation, if I heard you correct, Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir.
I'd feel more comfortable doing it equitably. Yeah, and I'm not sure it feels that way to me right now. That's all.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if I understand this amendment, you're suggesting that we fund Public Works to plow private roads outside Service Area 1.
I'm proposing that we treat outside Service Area 1 the same as inside, and since we're currently going to do, plowing inside, I want to do it outside also. Go ahead, for this year. Go ahead.
The amendment was worded to contract.
Yes.
So I need to remove that if it's, and just have Public Works continue to do it.
I would be willing to amend it, and I will, if that would help you, amend it to have Public Works do the work.
Second.
Debbie.
Thank you. I just was looking for a second.
Okay.
Grant, thank you.
Okay, so the amendment we have before us now is not to hire subcontract snow removal outside of Service Area 1 this fiscal year. It's to allow Public Works. Is there a dollar value on it? $10,000?
It was $8,000 in the budget originally, wasn't it, Steve? Or Jody?
I defer to Mr. Cotta. I'm not sure we have a price tag on that.
Yeah, 8 to 10,000 is, I believe, where we were at. I would like to add something, if I may.
actually, we're just in discussion amongst the members. Does anybody have a question of Mr. Cotta? What were you going to add, Chris?
Yeah, I was going to.
Just that there's another dimension to the snow removal issue on private roads besides the budget question. That would be the condition of those roads. In a lot of cases, they're not maintained very well, and it causes excess wear and tear on our equipment. So if we move ahead with maintaining borough maintenance on, say, the Papke's roads, we're going to have a conversation with those folks about getting those roads up to standards, because a lot of them are in really poor condition. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there as part of the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Member Stanton-Grader?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, things have shifted around, so a question for the city manager here. So you talked about pulling one of the public works to do maintenance-related stuff. How would, if this amendment passes, how would that impact your plan? And a quick secondary one as a follow-up to that then. Going back to the previous amendment, what your opinion was on the idea of contracting for those services. So a two-part, please proceed.
Thank you. Contracting it would be better for us than having Public Works maintain it, continue to do it. Not from a price tag perspective, more so from a standpoint of having to deal with it with the staff.
Yep.
We will take care of whatever the assembly wants us to do. Public Works Director Cotta is correct. I mean, we've got a road condition issue in some places. We may be in a position where we're having to tell people we can't do it anyway if they don't do some work on the roads. Although it's a back and forth issue, to be honest with you, because many people say that the reason the roads are in bad shape is because we try to plow them and don't do as good a job as the private contractors used to do. So it is a tough issue. Rather than add a full-time maintenance person, we were trying to free up the maintenance person out of Public Works so he would have more time to hit the buildings that are, frankly aging. And that was a way to kind of buy back some of his time, because he does a lot of the smaller roads and parking lots and stuff, and it would help us not to have him do that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. That crystallizes my thinking more on this, and just so I go on record for my thought, I would have I preferred your earlier amendment, Member Lynn.
Oh, good. So, is there any other discussion on the amendment, which is to have Public Works plow private roads outside of Service Area 1? Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, we always talk about wanting to privatize, parts of city government, that there are private enterprise in town who can do this job. And these private individuals say they can probably do it more efficiently and more cost effectively than the borough can, with less wear and tear on borough equipment. The Papke's area is 2.4 miles of road. Why not have private enterprise do it? I mean, the borough doesn't come up to my house and plow my driveway, but if I moved out to Papke's, they'd be coming out there and plowing my driveway, or plowing in front of my house. Here's an opportunity to kind of save the borough some money, but for some reason, we think the borough should drive 13 miles out the road in their truck with their chains on and plow everybody's house out there, when we have private individuals in town who would like to be able to try this out.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Kurt?
No.
Taylor?
No. Motion. What? What are we voting on?
We're voting on adding $10,000 to the...
Okay, original motion.
Or having the borough plow private roads outside.
Yes, I thought this was having Public Works plow. Yes.
Right, that's where we're at. Okay, we have one vote.
Okay.
Kurt, you're still good with your no?
I'm still good with no.
Okay.
Okay.
Taylor?
No.
Jeff?
No.
Mark?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy? Yes.
Jay?
No.
Okay, if it fails on a 4-3 vote. Did you have any other amendments?
I do.
I can't remember. I didn't write them all down here. So what next?
But just a second, now we're back to his original amendment of the $10,000 to contract the plow.
I wanted to contract the original.
Because he had amended his amendment.
Okay.
Messy.
Any discussion on that? Clerk, call the roll.
Well, Mr. Mayor, just one question, just to clarify. So this is to add $10,000 to the budget to contract outside, or have private enterprise plow outside service area 1.
That the borough would pay for, correct? The borough would pay a contractor, yes?
Yes. Specifically to the roads that have been done in the past that were agreed to when the borough was formed. Those were, I'm not asking to add any more, just to do what we did.
Existing services is what you're saying. Okay.
Just for clarification on Member Lynn's last comment, did we actually make an agreement to plow certain roads outside Service Area 1 when we formed the borough? Remember, Carl, you'd probably remember.
What's that?
Did we, when we formed the borough, agree to plow specific roads outside Service Area 1?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah, there's quite a few roads in the Papkees area that they're long roads. They serve many residences, and the reason for doing that is public safety, so that ambulances, fire trucks, police cars can get to those residences if needed.
Okay, all right, okay. So the roads that were previously serviced is what Member Lynn's referring to. Member Norham, you had a comment?
No, well, I mean, I guess that just kind of answers.
Okay. Any other discussion? Member Michi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So is that a written contract, or is that just a verbal contract? I mean, where could I see that agreement?
I'm not sure. It might be just in the minutes of meetings leading up to the vote on the borough formation.
Correct.
Okay, but
So to answer specifically, no, there was no written contract. But was it discussed during borough formation? The answer is yes.
okay, so we all clear on what we're voting on? $10,000 for plowing roads that have previously been plowed outside Service Area 1 to the tune of $10,000. Clerk, call the roll.
Taylor?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
No.
Jeff?
No.
Bob?
Yes.
Okay, that passes with 5-2 vote, so we will, if it proceeds to the third reading, that's where we'll end up. Member Lynn, did you have any other amendments?
I have one more that I'd like to make, and that would be to place the funds to fill the police officer and the EMT position on hold pending final budget approval.
Second that.
In other words, not fill the position.
Okay, but the motion's been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Borough to not fill the positions, but to leave them funded in the budget?
Yes, on pending the final budget that we know where we're going. I just want to leave it. I don't want to fill positions that I may have to turn around and do away with and spend money. I just, that's where I'm want to go with it.
Member Stanton Gregor?
Just a point of clarification from Member Lynn. Are you referring to final budget approval from the state? Is that what you're saying?
Our final budget approval. The state will have to come first, and then I know we're going to have an interim budget.
Our final budget is this takes 3 readings. That puts us the first meeting in June. That's when our final budget's out. So I'm just looking for what we're clarifying here.
Good point.
That's what.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I don't want to fill the positions until we as the borough have a final budget, because I don't want to have to turn around and do away with positions or other positions. Is all I'm asking for. I'm not saying take a money away. I'm just saying just leave it set. Leave it. No decisions on it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Member Stanton Gregor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure if we're going to have a final budget in terms of from the state. The idea of I mean that in seriousness. I think we may have a variety of supplementals coming down the pike, and I'm not trying to discredit your point, because I think you're coming from a really good human perspective, wanting to protect people's lives and livelihoods. I'm just trying to wrap my head around when and what that would mean, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, none of this is going to go into effect until we've had our third reading of the budget anyway. I mean, we can say what we want, just because it passes in its first reading on this budget doesn't mean we're going to run with it. It has to go through all 3 readings and public testimony, and nothing's going to happen anyway till the budget's done, as far as I'm concerned.
It seems, just a comment, it seems to me like if we left that part of the budget like it was, and then before the manager, fills the position, or after we approve our budget, we just ask him to not fill those 2 positions till we see what kind of funding we have. So, anyway.
Excuse me, did we get a second? I missed it if we did.
We did get a second.
Thank you.
Borough seconded it, sorry.
Thank you.
So, any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Just a point of clarification. I mean, are we just voting not to do anything until the third reading of the budget?
We're voting.
I think what we're
getting ahead of ourselves, I think, by voting to not fill these positions. If maybe it'd be proper if the maker of the motion would remove his motion, and then we just dealt with it after the third reading.
Yeah, I would remove the motion.
Is that okay with the person who made the second?
Yes.
There we go. Okay. All right, so is there any other discussion on the budget as amended? Member Stanton Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for folks listening at home, as the reminder that there are 3 readings. The budget is a 6-week process, and amendments often happen in each reading. So if there's things that you feel are important to you, to please call, email, or show up and testify and let us know what is important to you in the budget so that we can make wise decisions in our seats up here. That's all.
And as we go forward with this and making amendments, and I know this budget for this fiscal year is roughly $100,000 more than the last year's budget, and now if we, I don't know what these, I guess would be 50,000 left with the IT gone, but 10 more with the snow plowing, so it'd be nice to know as we move forward what the overall budget is, in relationship to last year's. Is that?
I'll send something out to you.
Okay. Not trying to be confusing, just trying to keep track of the numbers. A lot of stuff to keep track of. So, is there any other discussion on Ordinance 2019-03, and that's first reading? Member Borough.
I have just a couple questions. Number one, there's department head raises. Is that included in the budget, and what's the percentage?
Yeah, it's 1%, just like the union's contract.
And my one other question is, the Parks and Rec budget is about $200,000 more than it was a few years ago. Why is that?
Is that for me or Chandra?
So I would say probably 40% of that. There's a giant increase in insurance cost. We have had and absorbed 2 full-time staff members for the cemetery. And the Parks Department, we've absorbed a full-time staff member for the maintenance department. Our professional services department line item budget dropped because it moved like a janitor that was paid in professional services over to a paid position program. An analysis of our lifeguarding hours and needs. We were severely understaffed for the amount of hours that we currently operate at, and so an increase in request for more lifeguard hours has been presented, which also got wrapped into the facility specialist position. So we created a full-time facility specialist position to help cover the front desk position as well as lifeguarding more hours. There's quite a few different changes and thoughts.
That answer the question, Member Borough?
Yes.
Any other discussion on this year's fiscal budget, Ordinance 2019-03?
Mr. Mayor, I have one question.
Go ahead, yeah.
So we are not giving the city of Kupreanof $4,000 from their PILT money. Is that something new this year, or is that something that we've done in the past?
This is the first time we haven't passed through the money, right?
Yes, sir. The story behind it is, back when we were not a borough, Kupreanof and Petersburg received our PILT funds separately, and after borough formation, the way the state sends that money out, it just sends it to the borough. It does not designate any for Kupreanof. It just basically says the borough of Petersburg gets X amount. We have continued, Jody came up with a calculation that's roughly the equivalent of what they used to receive. It's that $4,000 to $5,000 number. And we've been paying Kupreanof after the PILT is renewed and we receive the money. Part of the process of trying to get this budget smaller and to cut things, I made the recommendation to stop that payment. So this is the first year that we've ever went down that road. Well, actually, I think we tried last year too, and somebody put it back in. So anyway, it's a payment that Kupreanof used to get directly from the state back before we were a borough, and now that we are not a borough, they do not get it direct anymore. It comes, and it's not designated for Kupreanof, but it's money that comes directly to Petersburg Borough.
Member Michi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I will be adding that to the budget in the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion on the first reading of the budget? Clerk, call the roll.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Okay, the first reading of the budget as amended passes unanimously with a 7-0 vote. That now brings us to Ordinance 2019-04. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 9.28 titled Fireworks of the Borough Code to update language, declare its application within Service Area 1 only, and allow public use of fireworks inside Service Area 1 on July 3rd, 4th, and December 31st at specific hours as listed in the ordinance. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Norheim, seconded by Member Borough to adopt Ordinance 2019-04. Any discussion? Member Stan Gregor?
Yeah, I would move to amend the ordinance to remove Section C of 9.28.020. It's all 1, 2, and 3 of Section C.
Okay, that's...
The part about the hours of when it's allowed in Service Area 1.
And what amendment?
I would amend to remove that.
So then it would make it so we wouldn't be...
I would keeping it as it is right now, not allowing fireworks inside of Service Area 1, correct.
And it would implement the fees for fines.
Yep, everything else would be the same.
Okay, all right.
Just that part.
So does everybody understand what the motion is, the amendment? Here's our second for the amendment.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Walhooter to remove under 9.28.020, Section C, items 1, 2, and 3, which is allowing hours of use of fireworks in Service Area 1 from noon on each of the days, July 3rd, 4th, and December 31st, from noon to 1 a.m. So that is what would be removed if this amendment passes. This would be removed from this ordinance. Any member Stan Gregor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just to explain my thinking. I had a lot of members of the community come up to me and speak to me about that topic, saying that they don't need that in Service Area 1, that people talk about how it impacts their pets, their kids, and one individual in particular spoke, really resonated with me, is that what does this do for us as a community? How does that benefit us? And I don't think it does. I think cleaning up the language and lots of the other pieces in here I'm really good with, like allowing possession of fireworks. As we all know, fireworks are discharged in Service Area 1 anyway, a lot of the time around those holidays, and much to many people's chagrin, but by allowing it, I don't think it serves any public purpose, so I'd like to remove it.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to hear from Assemblymember Norheim. I mean, he kind of was wanting this, and I'm just trying to figure out if we don't do it this way, what is that, is that accomplishing what you originally tried to do, or what do you...
Well, essentially, in talking with the police chief was that he wanted to make it legal or illegal because it was just kind of neither, really. I'd like to see it legalized because right now it's, I mean, I can go out on my back deck and light off some fireworks and then run inside really quick. And the police show up and, I mean, that's kind of what everybody's doing. So we can make it illegal and we can go around and be slapping fines on people for something that they've been doing forever anyways, or you can just make it legal and just say, your dogs are scared of fireworks, maybe you should put them inside on the 3rd, the 4th, and the 31st.
Okay, any other discussion on the amendment? Clerk, call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Is this for the amendment?
This is on the amendment to remove the dates and times of the July 3rd, 4th, and 5th to allow fireworks inside Service Area 1. Correct?
Correct, to remove allowing it, yes.
July 3rd, 4th, and December 31st. Correct.
Okay, so Mark, you're still good with a yes vote?
I knew it for it, yes.
Thank you. Kurt?
Yes.
Taylor?
No.
Brandy?
No.
Bob?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes. Okay, the amendment to remove the allowable times and dates to set off fireworks within the city limits has been removed from this ordinance at this time. So now we're back on to the ordinance as amended, which all the fines and other things in this proposed ordinance would cover. So is there any discussion on the ordinance as amended? Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this is like, let's just said the past, this is the first reading on this. Next time we read it, it's going to be the second, which will be the public hearing, and if I can hear compelling reasons why to put that back in, I'd be more than happy to amend the next time we're together and put that back in. But for now, I'll be voting to pass this ordinance as amended.
Any other discussion? I have one question of staff, and who could answer it properly. So every ordinance has to be vetted by the attorney. What was the attorney's opinion as far as liability for the borough goes with saying, okay, you could set off fireworks in city limits on these dates and times?
Even better than that, I contacted our liability carrier and nothing changes, if it's allowed.
Oh, yeah, I'm curious. So they'll cover us. Okay. Clerk, call the roll on the ordinance as amended.
Taylor?
Yeah.
Brandy?
No.
Bob?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2019-04 passes as amended, and that brings us to assisted living consultants. I would entertain a motion to authorize Manager Giesbrecht to go into negotiations with the Fox Group for an amount not to exceed $20,400 to discuss assisted living.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Walhuter to allow the manager to negotiate or have them look at better ideas for the operation of assisted living. Any discussion? Member Stanton Gregor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just a thank you to Steve for really getting after this topic. It's very relevant, obviously, to our aging community, so thank you.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what I don't understand here is that we're going to start negotiations not to exceed $20,000, but $20,400, but that doesn't include incidentals and travel. I mean, is there a way to refine that so in case it costs more than that? I mean, if we're going to make a motion for amount of money, shouldn't it be something that, or don't they know how much travel is going to be involved? I'm just trying to get
Can you address that, Steve?
I can, Mr. Mayor. First, I like Jody's idea about, maybe a future amendment just to add this to next year's budget. That's probably the cleanest way to do that.
Yep.
So the issue on training, travel, has to do with, I can give the assembly an estimate. We know how many people would come, and we know, in general, how long they would be here. That length of the stay is slightly up to what do they find when they get here. So they didn't want to necessarily commit to saying, hey, we can get it done in 2 days, and if they come out here and say, okay, wow, it's going to take us 3 or 4 days. So that's part of the problem, and that's what we're talking about when we talk about travel and incidentals is hotel, food. And so I can get an estimate together for the assembly of what we think that might cost. We try to use mileage to, for the airline tickets, but all the rest of it is going to based on how long they stay here. In both their proposals, they give estimates on how long they think it would take, but they're fairly broad ranges of time. So that'll change those numbers a little bit. I just want to add, though, you didn't ask for this, but I'll add to it, which is this is no reflection on Sheila or the management team up there. They're doing an absolutely wonderful job. It came out very clear when we had these meetings with these folks on the telephone. There was actually 5 different groups we talked to. She had all the answers. They quizzed her pretty good, and they came away going, "Yeah, we think we can help you, but sounds like you know what you're doing." So this is one of those things that I'm not sure how much we'll get out of it. I think it's worth looking into because we're grasping at straws right now to try to find ways to lower the costs up there or improve the revenue. But I don't want to sit here in the meeting and say, "Oh wow, we're going to balance the budget in assisted living if we bring these consultants in." I don't think that's going to happen. I think Sheila runs a really tight ship. I think what will get us some ideas that'll help us, but it's not going to balance the budget up there.
That was one of my concerns as well, was what the travel and lodging costs could end up being, and it's going to be half of what the budgeted, the amount is, and it gets pretty expensive. I agree it's important. I think it's important to have someone look at it. Have we ever done this?
I don't believe so, Sharon. No. Okay. Yeah.
So maybe it's time to try to figure out if there is any avenue to go for efficiencies.
And if this helps, I mean, the group that we're recommending is in Southern California, so the travel is pretty straightforward. It's several of them were East Coast, and that would have changed the dynamics a little bit. Okay. But if we go with the Fox group, they are reasonable distance to us. Agnew Beck is actually in Anchorage, but their proposal was quite a bit higher than the other one. So,
Member Lynn?
Yeah, just a question on that. Will part of that also look at how we're doing the billing, Medicare, Medicaid, and some of those things, or how we can change procedures that might gain more money?
What their focus was, yes. They also look at scheduling, and one of the things that came out of it is this discussion that maybe we need a Tier 4, am I getting the terminology right? Which is a higher level of service that we could charge more potentially. So we'd have them look at that. And, they got really good answers from Sheila, which, was, in some ways you would hope that they would go, wow, oh, there it is. We can really help you. Actually, the exact opposite happened. They go, well, you're too small. We can tell you that right now. And it sounds like you got a really good handle on what you're doing. But we've got some good scheduling models that might help you. We can give you some wage information, which we kind of have to a certain extent. And we can look at how you're billing and what, if there's any opportunity there. Again, I mean, I came away from the calls even more impressed with Sheila than I already am with her, her ability to answer the questions. And these consultants were really good. I mean, they really know this business. But it's, I think we're going to run up against the fact that we're just too small. And I think we'll keep hitting that over and over again. It's going to be hard to break even. So,
Okay, thanks for your answer. Member Walhorter?
This is for Steve. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. How many people are planning on coming up?
The Fox group, I believe it was 2. And maybe 1. It just kind of depends on, who's available, and if it's their senior guy, 1 guy can do it. If it's not their senior guy, it might be 2 of them.
So that's a follow-up question. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So they're still going to give us a discounted rate of $290 an hour for their consultation?
And not charge us for their travel time. I know, doesn't that sound crazy? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Got it?
Yeah. Agnew Beck was even more expensive. What do you say?
Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Kurt?
No.
Brandy?
No.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Okay, that passes with a 5-2 vote, with Member Walter and Morrell, I believe, voting no. Couldn't be a long meeting. So anyway, we'll let the manager move forward with that. The next item on the agenda is application for a special use permit for Carl and Maryland, I'll probably pronounce this wrong, Holland. And it is a special use permit to construct and maintain a driveway on Neptune Street right-of-way to provide access to the backyard at 605 South Nordic Drive. The Planning Commission recommends assembly approval with specific conditions listed in the Planning Commission report attached. I'd entertain a motion to approve this request.
So moved.
Second. Motion been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Mucci. Is there any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Wow. Taylor?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Okay, that special use permit request passes unanimously. Next item on new business is E, Harbor Dredge Spoil Standards Letter. Would like permission to send a letter to our federal delegation requesting they urge the EPA to develop harbor dredge spoil standards consistent with the soil conditions naturally present in Southeast Alaska. Currently, Southeast Alaska is held to Puget Sound standards. I'd entertain a motion to send the letter as it is presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Member Walter, seconded by Member Morrell. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Okay, that letter will be sent off. Next item is 19-197, Ravens Roost Trail Reroute Memorandum of Understanding. I won't go into the details, but can you give who would be good to give a brief summary of this so the listening public could? Okay, Clerk Thompson.
I believe it's me. So, way back when, the U.S. government deeded some land to the state of Alaska, and in that deed, there was an easement for this trail, the Ravens Roost Trail. And so then the state of Alaska took a portion of that land that the government deeded to them and deeded a small portion to the city of Petersburg, and in that deed, still carried over the easement of the trail. And actually, there's only a very small part of the trail that goes across Borough land. But still, the easement still existed. So the easement now exists on state land and borough land. The trail is now older and needs upgrading and not as safe as it used to be. And after they've done their surveying, or whatever it is you call it, they found they have to reroute the trail. So we, the city of Petersburg, had already, granted the easement. We got the deed. We actually went through the process of granting the easement separately so that we knew it was always going to be on the books. And now this MOU would basically just say the trail's moving, and we are granting our easement to move along with the trail, and that's it.
Yeah, just clarification. Paperwork. Yeah.
Yes.
Paperwork. Any questions? Clerk, call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Okay, next item under new business is Parks and Recreation user fees. Assemblymember Norheim is looking for assembly approval to direct Clerk Thompson to rewrite the Parks and Recreation user fee code to provide that user fees are to be established by the Parks and Recreation Director with approval of the Borough Manager. I'd entertain a motion to approve this change.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second, for the sake of discussion.
You make the motion, Member Mucci? Member Mucci made the motion, and Member Lynn seconded it. Discussion. Member Norham.
So essentially, this is kind of falls under my concerns with the impending state budget. I thought that if we gave Chandra more direct control of prices, that could react quicker to, I don't know, catastrophic budget change. And it looked like somebody else had already looked at this before when we were looking at if we could change this. So I don't know who that was, but it was somebody else has tried to do this before. Obviously it didn't work, but.
Any other discussion? Member Stanton Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'll be voting no on this for a couple of reasons. One was goes a little bit of historical context. Chandra's predecessor, Donnie Hayes, both a good bowler and a good man, really believed in using as much public input as possible on any major decisions. And right now, as it stands, for him to be changing rates, that's 6 weeks worth of public discussion. 3 readings of any ordinance takes 6 weeks, and that encourages more public input. And I feel comfortable if we do have any catastrophic budget scenarios that we can. 6 weeks will be enough time to handle Parks and Rec stuff. So in short, I think it's good as it is. It makes for more public input. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Jay?
A yes vote would change this, so there would be new policy, just to clarify, so the Parks and Rec Director, with approval of the manager, could change fees for Parks and Rec.
That's true. However, before, just you guys voting yes right now wouldn't change everything. I would have to bring back the old ordinance saying it's going to be, with wording changing it.
Right.
So there would still be 3 readings to change it after this.
Okay.
If you guys want to move forward.
So we have to pay the attorney to
Yeah.
go through that process.
Yes.
Okay, so now we all understand what we're voting on? Clerk, call the roll.
Jay?
No.
Bob?
No.
Mark?
No.
Brandy? No. Taylor?
Yes.
Kurt?
No.
Jeff?
No.
Okay, it fails with the 6-1 vote with Member Norheim in favor. That brings us to communications. There's none today. There was a letter that came in from the Brackens that we didn't read into the record because they specifically didn't ask for that. And I'm sure all Assembly members received it. It was in regards to the library privatization. So with that being said, that brings us to item 17B. We've already addressed 17A, recognitions. Anybody or any staff have recognitions of anybody today? Member Walter.
I just want to thank that couple that walks in from out the road there and picks up trash as they come in from their home. So I'd let them know yesterday that it doesn't go unnoticed when you do those sort of things here. So thank you guys very much. I wasn't going to mention their names, but I think we all know who they are.
Perfect. Any other recognitions? Member Michi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not a recognition. I'm just, we went through the budget process and we, at the first reading of it, we added and subtracted, and I'm hoping that I get kind of an updated list of what we voted on, just so I have a clear understanding. I mean, it was hard for me to kind of keep track of what we wanted to add and what we wanted to take apart, and it'd be interesting to get that again, just so I can kind of look at it over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I believe the clerk was going to do that with dollar values.
Thank you.
Yeah. No other recognitions. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Darn it, I was going to hope we were going to keep going.
Fun here.
That's what